All right,
Now we're back up.
we good, baby. What's going on, Troy? What's up? What's up? How are you?
What's up, man? You got some news. All right, let's hear it.
Well, it's actually funny because as I was listening back to Act Nine,
Mm,
especially the clip that I pulled that you posted today,
mm.
talking about being unhappy in your role, like finding that passion, taking the skills from one role and putting it to another, and then finding the passion where you can use those skills, and now you're an expert, you can speak on them. So I guess ever since probably last November is when I started with Athlete Tech Group. Okay.
Right.
I started as a copywriter. It was an
Hmm.
internship position. And when I hopped on for the interview process, they said, we want you to understand that this is an unpaid position.
Yep.
And I was like, you know what? That's fine because this is going to be my first experience working within a company under someone that I really admire. I'm inspired by. He's led the way. He's, like someone that I could learn from. So I understood that. That was fine.
Mentor.
Well, we went through what? What's today? Today is July. So November
Three,
to May.
10 months.
So 10 months today. May was what, 2 months ago? So let's say 8 months in, we weren't getting paid.
Wow. That owner is a good salesman.
Well, to be honest, like I said, there was a lot of value in doing that stuff for free, um, because it was stuff that I couldn't learn anywhere else,
Right.
couldn't learn on my own in like as fast as I did and from the source and whatever. So that
Mm,
was fine to me. May came around and we said, okay, we're going to sign contracts. You guys start to get paid now.
nice.
Well, I knew in my head that um, being paid, I was going to be obligated to show up every single day, put in real hours, and like be on call. Like, because now I'm getting paid. Before it was like, hey, come when you can. We could really use your help. And of course, I wanted to be there all the time because that you miss one meeting and you're like, fuck, I'm lost.
Yeah.
Well, in my head, when I knew we were getting paid, it was like, oh, now I'm really going to be on someone else's schedule. And I don't know how I'm going to feel about that, but I've never experienced it before. So let's try it out. There's no harm in trying
Right.
because that's how you taste.
Hmm.
Well, May till, so it was it was a 2 month contract.
Okay.
And did we ever go balls to the walls? Like there was unlimited work. There was backlogs, there were sprints,
Always
there
is.
was just it
There
was
always
just
is.
nonstop. It was Saturday night, it was Sunday night, it was Monday, and I was like,
Wow.
okay, so here I am. I'm in a role where I've spent 8 months learning, and now I'm
Yep.
in 2 months worth of like, okay, let's like now I'm actually working. I stopped doing undressed jersey completely,
Yep.
right? Because I had no time.
Right.
I could have made time, but then like it would have been like pure dishappiness, and like you would have seen bags down, like and whatever. And I just wasn't. So I was like, you know what? I have a job. Let me focus on whatever.
Right.
Stay hot. Thank God for stay hot. But I was like, okay, now I'm no longer like, before I started that May, I said I'm going to be underneath someone else's schedule. It's not going to be like Tristan can make out his own schedule because you're going to be as an employee. You understand.
Right.
Anyway, long story short, Troy, during those 2 months, I was like, this is insane. The work is, it's not my dream. It's not my vision. It's not my company. It's not, so like, so I was more so, during those 2 months, I was trading my time for a paycheck.
Right.
As creative as I could have been in that role, and I was in that role, I was like, it's still not me. It's not an extension of myself. It's an extension of my boss, who I'm
Right.
like learning from. So like, okay, now I'm starting to taste. I'm like, honestly, I could see myself. I was like, is this going to be what I'm going to do for the next 20 years? Where I'm just like tied to someone else's schedule, building whatever. And so I said, I made the decision. I'm like, I got to walk away.
Wow.
So I gave my notice, and I have some work that I'm still there. But was it ever the hardest decision I've ever had to make? Because I respect this guy. I put in time. I believe in the vision. But at the same time, I felt that it wasn't a role for me. I need to do. I told you I was doing VP of partnerships. I was creating
Yep.
proposals. I was selling contracts. I was making stories and putting on events, and I was doing all that stuff, which I realized I love to do.
Mm,
But I wasn't doing it for Tristan's ideas, right?
right.
And I want to give credit to the company because they made it very freeing and comfortable for us to bring our own ideas to the table, to like be as creative as we wanted to be. We were allowed to be entrepreneurs within the company, but there was something about the lack of freedom that I had to go for a run at 10 a.m. and like if I wanted to, but no, I had to be sitting here. I'm getting ready for calls. So I made the decision. I'm going to walk away. I'm losing that, but
What are you gaining?
so much better.
What are you gaining?
I'm gaining freedom. I'm gaining my own schedule. I'm gaining the ability to create income for myself through adding value to other people's lives.
Right.
It's arguably going to be more work than, well, I don't know, man. The work that I was doing, it's just like I had no enjoyment. I didn't get excited getting up for bed. Like
Yep.
I had none of that, and it was the hardest decision to walk away, but I had to do for my gut as much
You
as
also.
that guy.
So what did you pull out of the role?
So Saturday, we had our workshop on Saturday, which is 6 hours on a Saturday.
So what? I know you quit. Well, you didn't quit. You walked away. Let's call it a walk away. I don't like to use the word quit. What did you pull out of that role? What did you learn from that role at VP partnerships? Like, what were some skills?
How business is conducted. How you can go from a Saturday night, 3 a.m. drunk talk with one of your best friends, and you have an idea. How do you take that idea, put it on paper, and present it to someone where they're like, "Hell yeah, I want to be a part of that."
Yep. The business. I think you learned the business side.
100%.
I think you just learned, and that might sound like so broad, and I don't know if people will get that, but like I think you just learned business in general, right? I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was till I was starting with Greencube, and I was like, oh shit, this is a contract. Oh shit, okay, this is how you invoice. Okay, shit, this is actually how people pay every day. Oh wow, that's revenue. Like it goes like that, right? You actually got to understand that on the partnership side, which is applicable now. You've pulled that skill out, and you can replicate that across. I don't know, maybe you go start your own type of consulting business, like where you do stupid, awesome videos like these, right? Maybe you do, I don't know, you take on Dress to Jersey to another level, and you start bringing on contracts and people not. Now you can pull that skill in a role that you weren't happy with, which is like the premise of Act 9, and ultimately apply to something that you love. So there is always a positive you can pull out of it. And I'm happy for you, man. I'm really happy that you're able to make that decision. And ultimately it's a decision that I can tell that you're secure with. And that's awesome.
It is. In the moment, like as soon as I hung up the phone, I was like, what the fuck did I just do? Because we're planning this amazing product that doesn't exist in a market that I used to be in as a college athlete, in the sports world. It was in the world. I interviewed he wasn't one of my favorite players, but he was a prominent player that I grew up watching in the NBA. I got to interview him.
Right.
So I knew what I was throwing away by not staying with this company because of the value, the progress we've made. Like we were about to do some shit, and I was going to be a part of that. And I would have, you stock options and this and that, and you're executive in the company. You started out, you're one of 4 first. So like in my head, I'm like, yeah, but if I walk away, what if? And I had to make the decision of happiness in the present versus what if or what might. I'd rather put that what if onto what can Tristan do? What if Tristan goes out on his own and creates this consultancy business and starts doing more things? Like there's always going to be another way to where I was. It's just like, I think I need to do that for me and not kind of do it for someone else.
Right. And I think that's the thing that you've realized, right? And I think that's something that you've pulled out of that situation. Dude, go back and go watch the full episode of our last video. I think the writing was on the wall, to be honest about this, and I think we pulled that out. I think you know what I mean. So I think, yeah.
Well, as I was watching it back, I was like, man, like, as much as I wasn't trying to make the episode about me and like put my own like experience into it, because I wanted to keep it objective for you to touch on, I was like, I'm asking all these questions to get the answer for myself. You know,
I was like, oh yeah, I think we established last time that Tristan is not happy in the role that he's in, and ultimately we got to the bottom line that Tristan's passionate about video. He's always passionate about video, and that's something that's not applicable and that he's not doing right now. And you said that back like 3 episodes ago. You talked about your passion. Then we went to here, and it's funny, right? You now in Act 10. Wow, 10. You've made that decision to ultimately go do this. So this is now like a whole new journey for you, which is super exciting.
It is, and it hasn't started yet. I think I'm gonna continue working until August.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I want to make the transition as easy as possible. I don't want to burn any bridges, like at all.
Don't do that.
But it's funny, Troy. It's funny. I think I knew this feeling, and I think I knew this is what I wanted all along, even before I started looking for jobs.
Right.
I just thought I owed it to myself to experience it. So I really knew. It's like when someone says, "Oh, I don't like that food," and they're like, "Well, did you try it?"
Right.
No. Well, then how do you know if you didn't like it? Even though I was almost certain I didn't like the whole corporate, being a project manager and managing a team and filing tasks and deadlines. As I already knew that scared the hell out of me, but I was like,
right.
I owe it to myself to try this, to go down the traditional path of go to university, get a good job, a good paying salary, and sign that contract and benefits and this and that, and retire when you're 55.
Right.
I hated that. I hated that whole narrative. I hated it.
It's mostly like 70. You're mostly working until you're 70 if you do
that. Yeah, 65, 70, exactly. But
entrepreneurs can do it when they're 30. If they make it. Or you can be working till you're 100.
That's what I mean. We've talked about this before. We're like, hey, Troy, if I like what I'm doing, I don't care if I'm working to 95.
Right.
Because it's passion. It's not work. It's passion. And I wasn't passionate about being an employee, building someone else's dream on their schedule. And not like, man, I can't tell you. I went home from Nova Scotia. I was there for 2 months. I brought my golf clubs because I wanted to go. I had all my friends who were going to go golfing every day, every weekend. I'll go when I can. Troy, I was there for 2 months. I golfed once. It's like I didn't leave my computer. I hated it. It was. I was just like, man, like I believe in the project. I believe in the vision. I'm the customer. I would use this.
You're also just a creative body. Like you're a creative body. It's not. And guess what? Creative bodies need room to navigate and ultimately establish a schedule for them. I do think you need guidelines when it comes to like being in the office and grinding. But like I'm a super creative body. I like to go outside for walks. I like to go on a run. I like to wear my workout gear to the office and go for a run like 30, 45 minutes, maybe at 6 p.m. But I have the freedom to do that. And my partners and everyone else here goes, yeah, well, Troy's showing up in his workout gear. We don't give a fuck, but he's going to throw on a collared shirt whenever he has a sales call to look good. But like, they get that because I'm a person that and you're not either. You can't stick them in front of a computer screen to type out documents after documents after documents after documents because we're basically going to take a gun and shoot ourselves in the fucking head and to not be as bold as that is. Like, we're just not, that's not who we are. I'm a person who likes to come up with ideas, apply those ideas, execute those ideas, jump on calls, talk to people, get their information, take that information, put it into the product. That's me. And you're very similar that way. In that fact that you like these types of engagements. We're not paperwork people. There are people that are amazing and have that's their superhero skill.
You're so good at it.
So good. One of our employees here, Aiken, she literally is like the most organized person. She takes notes on her own podcast, like random podcasts. She takes notes on them. And they're not like, Tristan, they're not like little like yellow pages notes. They're like 5 fucking pages of notes on like a random podcast on how to make cookies, right? It's like, it's insane. And I look at her and I go, holy shit, if I just had like 0.01% of that, like I'd be amazing. But like, that's also just not me, right? And like I said, it's interesting, right? It's just, I think it's really awesome, man, that ultimately you took the jump. Congrats. I think any person that I say that I meet and ultimately I know well, not even if I don't know well, I have so much respect for people that actually make that jump. And so my like next advice to you would just be keep an open mind, be very look at all your surroundings, experiment, try things, and then also I always tell people this: have a purpose to what you're doing. For example, some people say like, I'm going to Thailand, I'm going on a trip, right? Okay, well, what's the purpose of your trip? The purpose of your trip isn't an escape and to turn off your brain. You're going there for a reason. You're doing the same thing. You're going on this journey of adventuring out by yourself. There is a reason or purpose behind that, but you need to apply that purpose to that. And guess what? You don't have to know that purpose on day one, but you got to be looking for it. You got to have something in the back of your head saying, and like be open-minded, but be also very cognizant of what's around you and try to apply and look and see and just try to discover. Be open to discover.
Agreed. I think what I was having most trouble with walking away was like, Tristan, what's the reason you're walking away? Well, for one, I've discovered that I don't like this style of work.
Right.
I think that's a reason.
Good.
2, I think you speaking on how you're a creative body, it's like, okay, yes, that's where I see a connection with Troy, because although we're in different positions, I can still see the creativeness in the people loving and energy like that. I think that's creativity in some sense. So I was like, okay, I need that.
100%.
But then if someone's like, hey, Tristan, like, why don't you want to stay here? It's like, well, you can't just say because I don't like it. It's just like, I think I'm going to discover as I move on to the next thing, I'm going to be like, okay, these are the clear differences of why I like this substantially more than I liked that. It's also scary, right? Because like you understand, like it's no longer when you throw out a schedule that's built for you. Say, Tristan, you need to be at this time and we need this from you at that date and this night. When you throw all of that away, it's now like so unknown. You don't know what's next. You don't know what direction you're going down to. You could start out with gambling data and then pivot, and now you're disrupting an entire industry. So like, but you never know that. And I think I like that. I think I like when I booked that one-way ticket to London, England, I was like, well, I don't know how this is going to happen, but let's do it. I think I'm always wired, and that kind of philosophy or perspective gives me energy.
I think also like, I think like if I had to like tell myself back again, like if I had to go back, like kind of where I left my consulting gig, right?
Yeah, that came up in the last episode, and I wanted to like unpack that more. Like, where did this I had my own consultancy business. Where did that come from?
That came organically, actually. So it kind of is funny. So I was like, yeah, I'm sure my partners will love to hear this too, because they probably didn't know. But so I came out of school. Ultimately played the pro hockey thing for a bit, and then ultimately started a company called Skip. And Skip was an app basically for night bars and clubs, an Uber surcharge fare to get into a club when you're 21, right? We didn't know anyone at the time. We had no contacts, and we were just a bunch of young 21-year-old punks. What do you do when you're young 21? You want to start a business? Create a line Skip app, right, for a club. So that's what we did. ultimately it was pretty cool. We signed up like a bunch of premier clubs, like Early Mercy, Spice Root at the time was on it. We had like Citizen, a couple other like bars and clubs, and we're like, oh fuck yeah, we're like big shots signing up clubs in Toronto, sick. And then all of a sudden, like they were like, well, we make $0 at the door every night. It's all cash, right? They don't report it. And so basically what happened was they were like, we're not going to do this. And we said, well, how about we do this? Because we knew the demand. We knew the demand outside the club. And we were like, okay, just give us 20 spots. Okay. Basically a promoter. We'll pay you cash ahead of time, give you $400 cash, and we get to charge it. We get to sell them for whatever we want. And so we actually started making money on this across all these different venues and selling them for 2x, 3x multiple. Then what started happening, Tristan, was people started coming back to us and going, guys, can't fucking do this anymore. And we had like 1,000 basically club goers in Toronto on the app, and it was growing. We were like, oh, we're gonna be fucking gajillionaires. A couple guys come back to us saying, you can't do this anymore. You're killing our bottle service business. Like, because people were buying skips rather than actually doing bottle service. So we ended up closing the business down because we didn't have the capital scale and stuff. But I got picked up in New York City because of it. So I went to New York, got connected. My sister was actually interning at a venture company, an incubator called Loeb NYC. Loeb NYC was Michael Loeb, who's the founder of Priceline, a former founder. And Priceline obviously is like Expedia back in the day, massive, right? Well, he's a multi-billionaire. The show Billions, actually, with Paul Giamatti on Showtime, they actually use his house in the Hamptons. So it's kind of like a fun fact. It's pretty ridiculous. It's stupid house. Yeah. Anyway, so he's a loaded guy. Go there, basically went there kind of looking for like a job, basically, right? He's coming off Skip. He's like, I know Michael wanted to start this whole like Airbnb open table kind of spinoff, and talked to him about it. Thought the interview went absolutely dog shit. Thought it was the worst thing in the world. I flew to New York, wore like a suit and everything, sweating, walking down Wall Street all the way up there. I'm like pouring sweat. I didn't realize how fucking hot it was in New York City. And then so I'm walking in there, I'm sweating, hair disheveled, blue suit, like just drenched. Oh. Go in there. He walks in like 15 minutes late, and sits down and goes, looks at my resume, starts talking. He's like, okay, so talking about Skip, talking to this. And I was like, oh, like walks out 10 minutes later, and I go, all right, I guess I'm going home. Basically, like jumped. I was like, all right, whatever. It's Friday. I can get back to Toronto. I can hit a club by like 10 p.m. and drink it off. Whatever. We'll be fine. Yeah. So I get back and then ultimately get a call on Saturday from Michael. And he says, so can you fly back next week? I'll fly back on Monday. And I said, okay. So I flew back Monday and basically walked into a meeting. And that meeting was actually a pitch. It was actually the first meeting for a new business that we were going to start called Lita, which is actually a LinkedIn influencer platform that they wanted me to run. And so actually, that was like my first meeting. And so I didn't even know I had the job yet. And then ultimately got that job there. So that was really freaking cool. And that was, we were sitting around the table with Michael, sitting around with a guy named Bonin Bao, who's like the CMO of Triller now. You know, Triller putting all the Mike Tyson fights and stuff like that. So really awesome room. And yeah, they took a shot on me. And also I picked up that New York gig. And also I came back I was doing consultancy in New York for a while, living out there, loved New York City, like one of the best places ever. And then ultimately came back to Toronto and got another venture company reach out to me in Toronto and say, just come meet up on a meeting. And ultimately came and talked to them. They asked me if I came on and said, yeah. And then they said to me, hey, Troy, would you want to work through this with us? So I said, okay, sure. And then I ultimately knew what I was making in New York, knew what I was making here. I said, and then I talked to my dad about it. He's like, well, you're basically starting a consultancy business. So I said, okay. So I was like, okay, this is what I want. I want like X amount a month and pay me this and I'll consult for you guys. And so I had the New York gig, the Toronto gig. And then I actually I was so proactive. I'm like, holy shit, pulling down like 15 to 20 to 25K a month on this. Right. I'm going to go grab another contract and hire people, create my own venture consulting gig. And I thought that was it. And so then I went to RBC Ventures downtown and I was talking to Suzanne Chan there, everyone. I walked in there and she's like, wow. You're like, I was like 23. It's like, you're a very confident like person. And like, ultimately, that's what you're doing. And I didn't know what the fuck I was doing at the time. I was just like, I'm whatever, we grab all these gigs and stuff. And ultimately jumped in and was like, yeah, it's this. And almost had RBC Venture set up. And then COVID hit. Right? And so I get a call from New York City and basically says like, hey, we're cutting all of our consultants because we're losing money. Like we gotta really protect the farm, right?
Yeah.
New York's gone. Then Toronto comes in, Toronto's gone. Then so everyone's cutting now, not because that's the risk about being a consultant is you're on contract, right? You're month to month to month. And I love that because I just like freedom. I like the freedom to go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8. When a lot of people, like a lot of entry people come out of school, they like their entry level jobs, right? And stuff like that. So that's the risk. So I was like taking a huge risk on that. Then I ultimately got hooked up with Greencube. It was kind of didn't fall into my lap, but it kind of was always had a communication with kind of the partners here, and ultimately got to that point, came on board, and then ultimately started growing that. And I was fucking miserable, and I was ultimately this kid who had getting paid a shitload of money doing these consulting gigs, but didn't really know what it took to actually launch a company. And I always talk about that, right? How Greencube was a big discovery process to actually launch a business. And I really learned what true hard work meant in that start a business, because these guys basically said, put me in my fucking place, right? And ultimately what came out of that, Tristan, was like even though I was making more money in the consultancy gig on a monthly basis, now it's all equity based value, right? Even though I was making more money back then, the amount of information and knowledge that I've learned through this whole process of Greencube is invaluable. So now if I were to go back out to do consultancies again, I could say, well, I did this, grew it to this, have this many clients, grew it to that. This is what the company's value at, raised here. Then we did Series A, B. I could, my pitch is no longer, I'm a Gen Z basically consultant for startups, and I got a good eye for what's on the market for young people for startups. That was my pitch back in the day. People bought it. It was full of shit. Now I could charge whatever the hell I want because I'm of value.
Mm-hmm. I mean, first of all, you laid that story out wonderfully. But it's so cool because now I'm like, through these 10 acts, I've had bits and pieces of Troy's like journey.
Right.
And even 10 episodes in, I'm still like piecing everything together linearly. Yeah. So that's super cool. But like, I feel the same way by putting in the time that I did with the Athlete Tech Group.
You're more valuable. You are more valuable.
I grew in value.
You're so much more valuable. You can go out and say, I do this, I know this, and you can talk to it. And that's value. Like, you can't sit in a meeting you can't sit in an interview or sit in a pitch and bullshit someone. What I've realized is you can. I was very good at it. I was very good at it back in the day. But it's way better to sit there with genuinity and actually experience to say, this is how I did it. It worked this way, and this is how I can do it for you. Right? And you have that. And guess what? Like, we're doing it for them. We'll always, like, you'll get bits and pieces and learn a little bit as you go. There's always a transition process, but you're honest about that. And you're honest about that, saying, hey, you know what? It might take 3 or 4 weeks to work out the kinks, just FYI, letting you know. But guess what? We're going to get there. We're going to make this right because I've done this before.
Yeah, I think when you can speak to experience, it's obviously just credibility. And people, it's always, especially that I'm starting to learn more about business, like, some people are always going to be hesitant in giving someone else money,
right,
expecting a return on it. It's a risk. It's a risk on both parties. But, you know, if you can clearly make them feel more comfortable by showing your credibility, showing your experience, be like, I understand where you're coming from. I can do this because I've done it before.
So it's actually, it's called, I call it speaking the language. So speak the language. So speaking the language, business is a language. And then guess what? There are so many subsets of languages in business. There's technology, there's sales, there's marketing, there's HR, there's finance. Every one of them has specific language. When you go to sit with someone across the table who is considered to have a lot of experience or an expert in that language, if you can walk into it, Tristan, and say, your ROI is this, for example, for sales. your sales cycle is this, your average contract value is this. Yeah, you need about 12 to 24 cadence points, to ultimately get to a contact, a book call. Okay, so your AC, so that can lead to ultimately probably around 3 to 4 clients a month of MRR, ARR. You can speak to the buzzwords and the language of actually what is going on. The person's going to look at you and go, that guy knows what the fuck he's talking about. But you're not acting on the language. You 100% know from a genuine place what that language is. It's like speaking French or Italian, right? I was fucking terrible at it, but ultimately I can speak the language business wise really well. Really well in sales and marketing. Technology, I'm pretty well versed. Finance, I'm pretty well versed. But like I just know how to create revenue and create value, right? That's my language.
Which is pretty important in business, right? Like
Is it though? It's only the oxygen of the fucking business.
So Troy, why don't people learn the language in business school?
They do, but they aren't listening.
I need you to unpack that for me and all of the viewers.
Okay, so I felt some school, right? I always say I'd be a better student today than I was back then because I have experience and I can actually relate principles, which is in essence the language, back to my experience, which is how I learn best, right? In business school, you're taught all these different, or economics or whatever you went, you're taught all these principles, all these models, all these different things. But really, you're not applying them to an actual real life business situation. So you actually are just hearing it and memorizing it to do well on the test because you need to get a 4.0 GPA. But you're actually not applying it, which is actually called listening and doing. And when you're listening and doing and applying the language in real life situations, you ultimately just learn, and it adds so much principles and credibility to your expertise.
I took French for 7 years. Okay.
Me too. I took it for 10.
And I can't speak a word of French. And you know why? It's because I never applied what I learned in the classroom into real life.
Exactly. It's all it is, man. It's application.
And that's why people say if you want to learn a language, you need to go live in the country that they speak.
Because you're forced to, right? You're forced to apply it. That's actually a great analogy and segue into this role. I was forced to learn sales, learn marketing, learn AI, learn tech because I was put into this role, right? And was I a natural salesman? No. Did I have the raw skills and personality, talking, all this stuff? Sure. Now I think I'm pretty good at it on that front, but the results speak for itself, right? And then, I had a big thing also here, Tris. On top of that was there's stages to the language. So, for example, you learn. So there's level 1 French, there's level 1 sales, there's level 2 sales, there's level 3 sales, level 4, level 5, right? I made. And this usually goes with experience of yourself, but also grows with the experience of the company. And this was something I really wanted to touch on today, was we dropped our price down to we first had our terms at 6-month contracts or year contracts. Then all of a sudden we weren't selling because we didn't have any use cases or anything. And ultimately I probably wasn't that good of a salesman back then. And so we dropped it down to 3 months, did a bunch of incentives and stuff to get people in the door, right? It was a level 1 sales tactic for the company, but also for me, right? Okay, also for me. Then I went, okay, we got a little bit of traction here. The company got a little traction, but hey, Troy, you got a lot better. I upgraded to level 2. Level 2 contracts are now 3 months X price, right? No guarantees, no subsidies, anything like that. Elevation, right? Then I went to now I'm approaching level 3 and 4. Right. And there's going to be and levels never change, right? It's like infinity. You're always going to get better. So now the contract, I'm like, fuck, you know what? Level 2 is so easy. I can do that in my sleep. I'm going to push it. I'm going 6 months, 1 year, bang, 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 these types of contracts. And guess what? That will keep going higher and higher and higher and higher as you go. So that's another big point. You can know the language and be fluent in the language, but make sure you're pushing the next level to become even more fluent in that language to improve and get better. And that's what I'm doing now.
The unlimited levels is so true.
Right.
because even Michael Jordan was leveling up when he was the best.
Right.
Right. He was constantly putting in work to become better, even though he was the best.
Yeah.
And then the whole idea of like, there are different levels and you need, well, first of all, like, I'm assuming when you first started in the position that you're in at Greencube, they're like, there was no manual saying do this. No one was holding your hand through these calls. They were like, Troy, figure it out.
It was like, Troy, go.
And you're like, well, I don't really know what's going on, but I'm going to just, rely on the experience.
Yeah, I mean, I felt that internally, but verbally to them, I said, yeah, I got this. I can do it.
100%. And I think that's the only way. So I've spent the better part of this past year writing a lot.
Yeah. Right.
And I want to speak on like productivity as a writer. I was always more productive when I went into a new blank sheet where I just wrote, and I would have a thought and I'd write that thought out, but then I would write another thought underneath, and in my mind I'm like, ooh, that second line should go first. Well, I found it hurt my productivity when I stopped writing, cut that second line and moved it above so it was kind of polished as I'm going. Versus if you just write, and even though you're recognizing that you want to move this around, get all the ideas down on paper, get it down. You can just go up, and then you'll go back through and cut what you don't want. Like, so productivity, it's like you almost need to let go of all your restraints and be okay with making mistakes, losing clients, losing calls, maybe, showing up to an interview sweaty, drenched in a suit. Right, you need to do that, because when you stop putting expectations on yourself, that's when you allow anything and everything to come through you.
It's not expectations, though. You always have those expectations.
Expectations of like perfection.
You know what it is? It's just security. That's a fact. It's just you're no longer insecure. I could show up tomorrow in New York City in a suit, sweating. And I would not give a fuck. Like, that is literally it.
A lot of people, that's the worst nightmare. Like when you told me, I was like, ooh, Troy, I feel for you showing up to that interview. Like, damn.
I feel bad because it's just a gross feeling now. It's like just disgusting type of feeling on your body. But now I'm like, well, I don't really care if I'm sweating. Like, the person across the table is also honored to be talking to me as well. So I have a lot of value to bring to this conversation. Before it was, I'm trying to sell myself to them. Now, no, Troy, we're just having a level conversation. That's the value. And I'm secure in that. And I know my value.
Okay.
Everyone has that value. That's the thing. But people get secure because they talk up. Everyone has the value, knows what has an inner value for themselves, right? Everyone can bring something to the table, right? And ultimately, but people often talk up to people, and that's insecurity. So you talk up to someone, and that's insecurity. Or someone even worse, someone in higher power talks down to you to put you deeper and drive more insecurity. You need to elevate yourself to a level, and that only happens when you're secure and know your value. And your value and discovery comes through a lot of fucking pain. It comes through a lot of experience. It comes through going to New York sweating in a suit and being insecure. It goes to sitting in rooms that you're uncomfortable with. It takes a level of uncomfortability and pain to elevate yourself to a level where you are secure and you can talk to a CMO, CEO, an analyst, anyone, and have a very valuable conversation with that person.
I've heard you say that before.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're like using that right now to like drive home this point, I'm like, okay, like Troy's not just putting on a front and saying these cool things. It's like, no, like you're actually speaking from your own experience. I feel 120% more confident today than I did last week.
Dude.
Because I'm no longer afraid to talk, like say my boss, like the worst news. He was having a great day. He was having.
You broke his heart.
His energy was high. We just got off a 6-hour workshop. Things were flowing, and I had to call. I had to say, hey, can we chat?
Yeah.
Hey man, what's up? What's going on today? I got to tell you, I've decided to just jump ship in the busiest part of our company when we're approaching go to market and like our backlog is this long.
Yeah.
But I had to do that. And now I'm so much more confident and secure today than I
But
was.
you were only able to make that decision because you're secure.
Yes.
You were only listen, if you were insecure and didn't have and like which let's call the last 10 weeks, right? You couldn't have made the decision 10 weeks ago.
Fuck no.
I was gonna say when you said I have news, I was like, wow, just look at that growth. Look at that growth over 10 weeks.
It's real growth, and I'm the guy who
Legit.
talks about growth all the time and bring up
Yeah.
conversations. But like when like here I am experiencing a decision point that I had a decision point. I acted on the decision, and guess what happened? Growth.
How cool is that? How cool is that?
It's the greatest feeling ever.
It's pretty cool, right? That's what we're doing this.
It's you know, it's scary. You know, you hear that and you're like, oh, okay, well, Tristan, like, have fun. You have no job now. But in my head, I'm like, no, I'm better than I was without a job than I was with one. And that to me is more valuable.
You got to have a secure level conversation with your ex-boss. And guess what? And you ultimately didn't jump ship. You said, hey, I'm going to work into August and support you and not burn any bridges. That's very mature of you. That's a level conversation. That takes experience to know. And dude, like, I'm very proud of you. You've done this like pretty amazing accomplishment and step. And dude, decision points. You've earned that decision point. If we go back to that.
Did I ever grind to get to that decision point? And I had to.
Damn right you did.
Because I could have, if I continued down, I would have been working like I was miserably until September.
Right.
Because that's what we planned. We had tasks all the way till September. And I was just like, man, I don't know if I can do that. I want to jump. I'm taking off, using what I learned, applying it. And here we are. And guess what? The coolest part is we have this all documented. So in 5 years, when we say, remember you were so scared to like jump ship?
When it'll be Act 300. Oh, it'll be great.
I'm just telling you. So, you know, by far my favorite act so far. I think you brought the fire today.
You did too.
That. And we'll see you next week.
Let's stay hot, Act 10, baby.
See you, bro.
Bye, buddy.